welcome into another recruiting Swampcast. Zach, Abolverdi, and Grahma here for the first time in 2019. The last time that we joined you guys, it was the early signing period. Florida had just inked its class, and Dan Mullen said that moving forward, their needs, Graham, were going to be defensive back and defensive line. And since that time, the Gators have gotten five-star cornerback Chris Steele committed and enrolled early, and they've also added a graduate transfer in Jonathan Greenard. So right now, as it stands heading into National Signing Day, Florida's in a good spot with what they've addressed need-wise, and I think getting Steele on board was a big deal. He's one of 9 early enrollees that the Gators welcomed to campus in January. He'll be on campus along with Jaden Hill to help that cornerback depth, and to have those guys as well as some of the other top prospects that they brought in competing in the spring, helping with some of those needs that they have personnel-wise, it's going to really benefit Dan Mullen. And then you add Greenard as well to come in as a graduate transfer, Graham. That's big when you consider the pass rushers that they lost from this past season.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive backs needed some depth, but the defensive line was probably the biggest unit that needed to replace some starters, and Greenard is a guy who was great for Louisville last year despite that bad season up there. He had 17.5 tackles for a loss. He can get to the quarterback. He's a great pass rusher, and you don't know. There's a lot of guys outside that Florida's very high on, but in the SEC you need a lot of depth, and they certainly address that, and they may not be done yet, Zach.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously they're going to continue to recruit, but the good thing with getting Steele on board and getting Greenard is, they're kind of filling up spots-wise, so there's not a lot of scholarship room left for Dan Mullen and his coaching staff to fill out the 2019 class. They're going to be very selective about the spots that they take, and they used this past weekend to really address that with the official visitors that they brought in. Graham, it was a half dozen guys, and really I think if you look at how Florida's class is going to close, I think Dan Mullen and his staff would like those final spots to come from the guys who visited this past weekend. If you look at Kyrie Elam, you look at Mark Anthony Richards, and you look at Charles Moore, those 3 guys, if they can get 2 or all 3 of them, that's going to propel Florida's class even higher up the recruiting rankings, but more importantly, really help them finish their remaining needs. I know you talked to Charles Moore over the weekend, Graham, and he was probably the best news that the Gators got from all their official visitors.
Yeah, he was someone who committed to Dan Mullen back in August of 2017 and stuck with his commitment to Mississippi State until last Monday, then quickly set up an official visit to Gainesville and was so impressed. Not when we talked to him, he wasn't really impressed with the team and the facilities so much as what the university could do for him down the line. Yeah. He said his family loved it. He even said that he was going to take Florida State out of his top 3. It's going to come down to Florida, Auburn, and Tennessee for
Gator
Charles
fans
Moore.
like that.
But you got to think that a guy who has a previous relationship with Dan Mullen has to be someone that certainly is high up there when it comes to guys that down the stretch Florida could land. They're going to have the pick of their litter. They're not really as in dire straits as they have been the past few seasons, and that's going to lead to a lot of excess visitors in a sense where they can really pick and choose when we get closer to signing day.
Yeah, absolutely. And for him, some of the comments, I mean, he made some really eye-opening statements about how much the visit did to propel Florida up his leaderboard. And like you said, it wasn't just about the football program. I mean, he compared that degree to something like Yale or Harvard. Yeah. I mean, that's how highly he thought of what he saw at UF. I mean, the Hawkins Center, all the things that they have facility-wise, if you've never been to Gainesville, and especially if you're from the state of Mississippi, it can really impress you. And I think if you have that relationship also with the coaches, which he does, it's really put Florida in a great spot to land Moore, who is now a top 100 prospect. He moved up in the latest recruiting rankings. So if the Gators get him, that's going to solidify their class as a top 10. Now, if they can add Kyrie Elam or Mark Anthony Richards, 2 guys from the Palm Beach area, you're looking at bolstering your cornerback depth if you get Elam, getting a Gator legacy, a guy that has always been a priority for this coaching staff throughout the cycle, and then Mark Anthony Richards. I mean, the rich going to get richer if you're talking about that slot position and him being able to come in and potentially play the Percy position and kind of fill in where Kadarius Toney and how he's been used, Jacob Copeland and how he's going to be used once he sees the field. So Florida's just trying to stockpile at this point. I think that if you can get more, Graham, and then you get Elam or Mark Anthony Richards, I mean, you're just adding icing on the cake at this point.
Yeah, certainly they have a little bit of work to do when it comes to figuring out scholarships and all that thing, but right now all you can focus on is signing a top class, I think, and Florida's in prime position to do that. You look at some of the guys who could be here in the next few weeks as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not be done yet getting top talent in, and you look at the coaching carousel, and Zach, this was something you and I talked about a little bit earlier. The coaching carousel seems to be hitting everywhere that Florida's recruiting against except right here in Gainesville. Gainesville. You look at Alabama losing Tosh Lapoy to the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
You look at all those guys out there that may now be considering the Gators as we get closer to February 6th. This is something that could change here. It is still in flux every single week, and it's because of things happening outside of Gainesville and what they're doing in the program right now.
Yeah, if you're a Florida fan, you just have to like the way things are set up for the Gators, not just with the results that they had in 2018, but the recruiting momentum that they're picking up while other schools, like Graham said, are struggling. It's not just Alabama with their coaching changes. You have Georgia and some of the stuff that they've gone through with the transfers, certainly Miami and their coaching changes, and it's just a dumpster fire in Tallahassee seemingly right now. So that's going to be something that Dan Mullen and his staff can take advantage of, and they're going to definitely try and benefit from it here as they approach National Signing Day. Florida's got the number 10 class in the country with the updated recruiting rankings as it stands right now. So they have a top 10 class, Graham. All the fans can stop freaking out about that. But if they get Kyrie Elam, if they get Charles Moore, they have a chance to finish maybe close to where they finished in the regular season, number 6, number 7. That would be great for Dan Mullen in his first full recruiting cycle. And then, before we finish, look at where they're at for 2020, 2021. They got a big commitment this week from Leonard Manuel right here in the Alachua County area. That puts Florida's class up to number 4. Their 2021 class is number 1 in the country. I mean, Graham, you're just rolling off this, some of these stats and where they're at. Recruiting is definitely going good right now for Dan Mullen.
Yeah, you look at Leonard Manuel, the number 36 overall player in the 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings. I mean, we talk about Chris Steele. He was ranked number 40. This is absolutely a guy who could be a 5-star. Yeah. Many sites do have him as a 5-star. You have to get guys like that this early, and that's one of the benefits that Florida is experiencing right now with after a 10-3 season and a Peach Bowl win over Michigan. You have to think that one of the benefits is that they can look at the future classes, and that's something that they haven't really had the luxury of doing here in Gainesville over the last few years. This is when you have to win these battles, and the 2021 class, you just said, number 1 in the nation right now.
Yeah.
Those kids, that gets set up right now because you look at the ground that Florida's 2019 class is made up. It is pretty amazing because usually these classes have to be kind of set in stone a few years in advance, and a first-year full class under Dan Mullen isn't supposed to be as good as it really is right now.
Yeah, and you look at that picture from the All-American Bowl where you had Chris Steele and you had the 3 products from Ocala Vanguard.
Yeah.
That's all 5-star talent right there, ladies and gentlemen, and all those guys right now are headed to Florida. So, that's just kind of a picture of what's coming to Gainesville. And you look at just what happened this week, too. Another 2020 commit for the Gators. Gervin Dexter landed an offer from Alabama. He's a top talent for the class of 2020, and you got a rising junior that has Alabama coming in and trying to offer a kid from the Sunshine State who's already committed to Florida. That's how it should be, and that's what Dan Mullen is establishing here within the Gators program. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Graham and I will be back with you guys with another recruiting Swampcast before National Signing Day. Until next time, see you later.